How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Great. So, quick thing. Thank you for the mug. And like how we were discussing before, my wife likes to collect them. And man, I'm telling you, that whole cabinet, it's full of it. But it should be okay. New thing though. So this is the first time I'm testing 2 new equipment with you. So you might be my guinea pig, but I think everything's working fine. Headphones.
Great.
This is brand new. Hopefully it's worth the investment that I got. And then new mixer, running a backup. So I think everything should be okay. But how was your New Year's?
I had a good holiday with my family at our lake home in Minnesota, and had my daughter and 3 grandkids from Costa Rica were home, and my daughter from Brooklyn, New York was home, and she's actually still at the lake with my wife. So sisters-in-law 2 were there, my nephew was there, and 3 dogs in our little cabin. So it was glorious chaos.
Do you guys or actually now, so yeah, the new semester already started, right?
Yes, it has.
Has it been busy yet with y'all, or how?
Oh yeah, we're always busy.
Really?
But when the students come back, things get really busy. Yeah, and then the week before is quite busy because there's adjustments for class sizes, and sometimes rooms get moved around a bit or something. There's always something to do in the background. The back office stuff never stops.
Okay, now
advising things like that.
You gotta tell me. So I always have to introduce people. I know what you do, but tell me, Tim, what do you do?
I'm privileged to serve as the Dean of the Beacom School of Business at the University of South Dakota. I've been in that position for about 1.5 years.
Oh, this is just recent then?
Yes, sir.
Oh, snap. Okay. This is great too, because I believe you're the 3rd dean I've talked to. I've had Amy on, and I've had Bruce Kelly on.
Yep.
So it's been great. And I just got to ask, I always ask everyone, like, even since you were a kid, did you always want to become the dean, or how did that work?
yeah, like a kid knows what a dean is, but it's been an interesting journey to get here. I actually graduated from college thinking, I graduated high school thinking I was going to hang drywall for a living.
Really?
I was going to start a company hanging drywall and doing taping and texturing. And then I went off to school, had a small football scholarship at a tiny school in the prairie, and about 2 weeks into being a student at university, I realized I wasn't going to hang drywall. I loved school. I loved the process of learning much more than I had in high school. And I was not a stellar student in high school. Small schools will push you through if you can play football and basketball. And that's a joke. I know that's not entirely true, but my math teacher was my basketball coach. So there you go. So after I graduated from college with a degree in business administration and a minor in computer science, a minor in accounting, when I became a computer programmer analyst at North Dakota State University for a couple of years. And one of the duties I acquired there was to teach upper-level administrators how to write their own one-time reports in a language called SAS, the Statistical Analysis System. So I ran a 3-day workshop because the people who were more senior than me didn't want to do it. So it fell to me. And what I found was I really enjoyed that process, and I became their sort of advisor, their go-to person. After that, when they had a problem, they would come to me and we would fix it. 2 years into my tenure as a computer programmer analyst, I stopped and had dinner with my old college professor of computer science, and he mentioned that they were going to hire another person, and I just jokingly said, geez, maybe I should apply. And he goes, yes, you should. The next thing I know, I was a college professor at the ripe old age of 23, started my MBA 2 weeks before I taught my first college level course. And then several years later, I had someone push me to get a PhD. So I went to the University of Arkansas for a PhD in computer information systems and quantitative analysis. A few years after that, I went to the University of North Dakota as a professor, where I became a department chair very quickly. And I was department chair for about 12 years. During that time, I was a MBA director for 5, and then was appointed the executive director and chair of the new School of Entrepreneurship there. I did that for 2.5 years before becoming dean of the College of Business and Economics at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. I realized as a department chair the difference I could make for students and for faculty and staff through administration. And I knew at some point at that point, I knew I wanted to be a dean at some point so I could broaden the benefit that I could bring to a larger group of people. And so after 5 years at Longwood, I left. My dad was struggling. I still was privileged to have both my parents at my age. And so I left to come home and help transition my dad to the next step, as we'll say. When he passed, I'd actually already started looking for a job because retirement was something I failed miserably, but I wasn't going to take a job until my dad had passed, and my mom was in a place where we didn't have to be around quite as much. But I was fortunate then, after a search that took about 6 months, that I was appointed the dean at University of South Dakota. It's a fine institution, and it's a place where, again, I have the opportunity to make a difference.
So this is okay. So you start before you were thinking that you were going to hang up drywall before.
I grew up in a family building houses, so I thought that's what I would do. I didn't know any else.
Oh, okay. Do you ever think about like, hey, maybe I should start something like that, or probably too busy, or?
Well, I love doing it myself, much to my wife's chagrin. She'll say, "Can't we just hire this done just once?" But I did start a company in the mid-'90s called Commark Incorporated in Mayville, North Dakota, where we built database. I guess the way to describe it is database back-ended information systems that worked over the internet, over the World Wide Web. It was a pretty new thing at the time. At one point, we'd grown to have 28 employees. We were the third largest employer in the county. And it was successful. My actual reason for starting it was I knew I wouldn't learn about this new thing called the web unless I was actually, head first, ankle deep in it. And so a former student of mine and I started it. And we were happy as bugs in a rug writing code for 6 months, and then realized, geez, we should probably sell something if we're going to stay in business. Brought in a partner who was a marketing professor, and we had our first sale the next day, and then it just took off from there. After 15 years, we basically turned it over to our employees, one of our employees. We didn't necessarily sell it. Probably wasn't very wise of me, but I was ready to move on, and that freed me up to do things like go to Virginia and become a dean.
Winnie Mae's is Vermillion's full-service Aveda salon offering haircuts, hair coloring, and a hair and scalp spa for the entire family. We use the highest quality, cruelty-free Aveda products. Call 605-658-1234 or visit winniemays.com to schedule a visit and treat yourself beautiful.
I guess throughout your years, how has the internet changed and computers?
Oh, I think, obviously the increase in power, exponentially every year and a half or so. Moore's Law, I think it's called. But I think what's happened is it's gotten incredibly more user-friendly, with interfaces being, touch screens, icons, facial recognition, all of those things. It's just gotten so much easier for people to interact with the computer, and more importantly, interact with each other through the computer. It has made the world an incredibly small place. When you can Zoom with someone halfway around the world for basically no cost, I mean, it breaks down the barrier to building a network that's worldwide. And
information's going quick.
It is. It just doesn't. The amount of information stored on each of us is kind of frightening, actually. But I didn't want to get into a privacy discussion. But I think my point is that although everything has good and bad associated with it, and we can certainly point to a lot of bad things with the internet. The I won't get into all the bad things. Everybody knows what they are. I think one of the really good things is that it makes the world a smaller place. And I believe in the long run, it will make the world a safer place because I have friends all over the world and I can stay in touch with them very easily. You're too young to remember when an international phone call costs several dollars a minute. Now it's free. And so it's one thing when my friends when the Chinese government and the United States government are not getting along. I view that differently than I used to because I have a number of friends in China. So I just can't put China into one big ball in my brain, one big chunk of my brain and say China's bad. Because I know more about China because I have friends in China. So it makes me a more intelligent consumer of news like our governments aren't getting along. And I don't want to see our governments fight because I have friends in China. I have friends in Norway. I have friends in Finland and Denmark and Tunisia. It makes the world a safer place because the more people like me are there that say, I know people there. I have friends there. They're kind of my family. It changes the dynamic and how we interact with each other, even on a national level.
Isn't there like, oh no, it's, I think they're talking about this, I believe this Sunday or Monday, that, what's it called? That TikTok ban? Have you heard about that?
Yeah. Well, it's been talked about quite a bit, but that's a more complicated situation because they're concerned about the Chinese government using data gathered through TikTok.
Oh, okay.
And using TikTok as a vehicle for manipulation of our population. And I understand that concern.
Okay. Wouldn't it be, I guess, would it be better if let's say like with the US government, if they're a little concerned about it, isn't it just better if they just say, hey, we'll just, for example, block it off from government issued phones or computers and just let everyone else do what they can?
That's one way to look at it. It's a complicated issue. The Chinese government has certainly banned some things or very limited greatly things from the United States, like Facebook.
Oh, that's banned?
I don't think it's been banned, but I'm sure they've limited it. I'd have to go back. It happened at one time, but I could be. I know they have limited access to some of the technologies that we have available here for people through social networking and such. And at that point, is it a quid pro quo situation? I don't know. I've been fortunate to teach in China for a number of months and kind of learn to understand that culture a bit and the way the government operates there a little bit. It'll take forever to talk about it, but I know that my room was bugged, when I was teaching. They had a mole in my classroom and things like that. And, thank God we don't live in that environment. But if they'll do that to a professor from North Dakota, I suspect that they watch pretty closely what happens on the internet with their people. So.
Okay. Well, I've heard about some of that stuff. Speaking a little bit about the internet, I think it was, I want to say this was like 5-6 years ago. It involved someone here, and I forgot who it was. They were trying to, if I remember right, I got to look it up, but they were trying to say that I think I'm probably generalizing too much. They didn't want the internet to be free. Mm-hmm. They wanted companies to kind of hey, if you pay this, then you have access to this. And then there was a big old kind of internet petition saying, hey, no, this is bad. You just leave it how it is. But that guy, I don't know if he was in Congress or he was just a business guy. He was saying, no, it'll be better, but they'll limit internet speeds with some websites. Do you remember something?
It's been a long time since I remember talking about that. I do know that I believe the guy's name is Tim Berners-Lee that actually invented the concept of the World Wide Web. And if he'd have just said, I want 1/10 of a penny for every HTTP call or whatever, he would be the richest man on earth. But he wanted it to be free.
That's great.
And so beyond that, I don't want to get into the politics of this or that. So
no worries. Now, speaking of nowadays with the age of the internet, and then how the AI and all that's coming up, do you have, there's people that are afraid. I'm not afraid. I like the tech. since I was a kid, I always, you watch those sci-fi movies. It's pretty cool. Like, or like Iron Man when he has like his own Jarvis. I think that stuff is great, especially when I think it was like a year and a half or 2 years ago when that ChatGPT came out. I was one of the first ones that was like messing with it. I think right now it's a little more. They put some restrictions on it, but it was like amazing, and now it's still advancing. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of concerned about it. I'm not too concerned, but what are your thoughts on that AI stuff?
Well, I'll address that from the perspective of a business school dean, right? Anytime there's a disruptive technology, and I will argue that it's possible that artificial intelligence is the most disruptive technology to come along in human history. By disruption, it means it changes the way we operate as not only individual human beings, but as society. People are frightened. If I can get this quote right, I think Jerry Seinfeld said, "We were smart enough to invent it." I'll have to look it up sometime for you. Smart enough to invent it. The ultimate thing is dumb enough not to know if this was a good thing or not. But I think it's a good thing in the long run. We have to learn to control it. People are frightened. I see that in the academy. I'm old enough to remember when the 4-function calculator came out in the 60s. And I was young. I'll give you that. But I remember being in math class and having math professors say, "You can't use this calculator in my class." How would that fly today? I mean, I'm sure there are still math professors that don't let you use a calculator in class, but that is denying the advantage of the technology. And so people are struggling with how they incorporate AI into the educational process. Do we allow students to use it? Do we limit the way they can use it? There's a lot of concern about using AI to write research papers, things like that. And do I have the answers to that? I do not. I think the bigger question for us is not necessarily the details of how we're going to address artificial intelligence in an individual class. It's really how are we going to leverage artificial intelligence to fundamentally change the learning process and the educational process to take advantage of everything it brings to the table. If you look at what could happen in society, for example, I have a good friend who is a futurist, and he said futurists are talking right now that there are potentially very few jobs that AI and robotics can't replace. And so what does education look like in a world where there are very few jobs? How do you support a society? I don't remember the name of the company. I apologize for that, but I just saw this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago that this company has stopped hiring people. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They intend to continue to grow. They continue to serve more clients, but they're using AI to leverage the people they have. And they literally have stated publicly that they are no longer going to hire any more people. Really? I don't know if someone leaves, if they're going to replace them or not, but it's sobering when you realize that that's what AI can do. And it's currently doing it in some very innovative companies. There is the concept of a peopleless company that can be operated with AI. It's a real thing. And so I think we're right to be scared about how we deal with it today. But I think as a society, we need to be thinking about how we're going to deal with it in 20 years and try to be ready for that and proactive, not reactive.
Okay. Because I was thinking about it and I was thinking, I don't know, could it just be like, hasn't this happened throughout history? Like, for example, when cars came out, people were scared about, oh, what about the people that are,
get a horse.
Yeah. Or when the light bulb came out, or like even same thing with the internet, people are, oh, what about books and this and that? And another thing is like, I feel like it could open up some jobs might be replaced, but it might open up some new things. Maybe like, for example, like right now, like I feel like maybe 10, 15 years ago, a lot of people wouldn't be able to do like their own content. It would always be like either broadcast or you have to go to a studio. nowadays you could use basically your phone, you on YouTube, learn some new stuff. This stuff, like, I don't need a big old studio. So that's what I was wondering if maybe like the AI probably could help, but also,
Well, let's bring it back. If we bring it back to education, the academy has operated for decades, literally hundreds of years. If you talk about higher ed in the classic model, on a scarcity model, you had to come to the university because that's where the knowledge was. The internet changed everything. Basically, information and even knowledge is free. It's tongue in cheek, but people call it YouTube University, right? and there is talk of when will Google open a university. But we as an academy maybe are not adapting fast enough to the reality that the scarcity model has gone away. And where there isn't scarcity, then what value do we bring to the learning process, and how do we change the learning process to increase that value and not only monetize that value, but have that value recognized by society? Because there's already a lot of people in society questioning the value of higher education. We are taking that seriously, but okay, what does education need to look like? Because we've incorporated some technology and things that, online learning, hybrid learning, asynchronous learning, asynchronous delivery of courses and such, but is that enough? And, can we use artificial intelligence to serve every student on an individual basis? Your learning style might be different than mine. AI can determine that, and AI can help deliver content that is unique to your needs, right? At a timing that works for you. You might be able to solve an algebra equation in 3 seconds, or it might take me a minute. And so, if we're going to get to the point where I'm at a competent level of solving algebra problems that you are, it's going to take me longer. And so, we probably need to get away from the idea of a time-based credit unit, for example, and get into what's called competency-based education, which can be enhanced by artificial intelligence. Do we need massive universities with thousands of students in residence halls? Or is there a way? We already know that a lot of our students are online and aren't on campus. I think the push going forward is going to be even greater toward online. That said, I'm a huge supporter of a residential undergraduate education where students come together and learn to live together and develop an affinity toward their institution around their athletic teams or their major and their fellow students in their sorority, fraternity, discipline organization, or whatever. I think it's incredibly important that we maintain that. But we have to recognize going forward that there are going to be a lot of students that need what we have to offer if we do it well, and they will not be able to be on campus, and they might not want to be on campus, and they might not be of an age where they want to be on campus. There was a book written a few years ago called The 100-Year Life, and it talked about how society is going to change given that half of millennials are expected to live to be 100 years old. And, they said their work life is going to last to 75 years of age because they just won't be able to, most of them, generate enough savings in retirement to retire at 65 or 67, whatever their age is, and live to 100 well. The drain on society's resources like healthcare and such will go up. And so how do we as a university serve that population? Because they also said that population is going to change careers multiple times. Where my generation, it was go to school, have a career, retire. For a millennial, it's going to be go to school, have a career for a few years, probably go back to school or get more training, upskill, change career, need more education, same thing over, change career again, need more education. And I think the model for the university going forward is going to be, we have to figure out how to serve that population. That population is going to be huge. So I see going forward for business education, for example, executive and adult education is going to be a big part of our portfolio going forward. It has to be.
Because I want to talk a little bit about the perspectives of like students, because I'm very curious now, and I think my mindset has probably changed over the years. Because I guess it might depend on, every situation, every family or every person probably has a different situation. Because you brought that up too a little bit. Because I thought, like for example, my family. So I'm the first one to go to college, and my whole family too, including cousins and all that. My parents, they're from Mexico and everything. So this is what they say. They say, hey, go to college, don't work what I'm doing. My dad, he's an electrician. My mom's a waitress, but I don't look down on it. But they say, hey, go to college.
Good, honest work.
Yeah, hard work. Go to school, get like an office job, make a lot of money, and you'll be happy and this and that. I thought that was the whole idea when I went to school. I went to a community college and I had to do the transfer. And then learn with like different people. I guess same thing. It just depends on the students. I don't know if people are just going, for example, to school just so they could get for example, just the degree, and then they could find a job. But after that, after I graduated, I had to learn, hey, you kind of got to start a little bit from the bottom. Because I thought, oh, after I get my degree, hey, I'll be making 100,000 like that. But that's not how it works. You still got to get the experience and this and that. Nowadays, I'm like, okay, that's how it is. But you think that perspective, you think that's what a lot of students have or are thinking nowadays? Or you think?
I think most people go to school thinking that the reason they want a degree is to get a job, sure.
Because even speaking with like the business side, like I'm not saying that you have to go to school, you don't have to go to school, but there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. I think some people are just picking like one thing. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'm probably just skip that. But the adaption with the same thing, like how you were thinking, like, hey, maybe like nowadays different institutions, they have to adapt because, yeah, like the younger generation, like millennials, they're probably changing and they'll have to go back to school, this. And I don't know if that would be like the solution because a lot of them are like, I don't want to go back into debt or this and that. So I guess right nowadays it might be like a little tricky field if you kind of feel me a little bit.
Not really sure where you're going there, to be honest.
I know I went way off on a lot of stuff.
But when you talk about the cost of education, I've suggested for a number of years that, say, for those adult learners, we might want to go into a subscription model.
Oh, so
that a person pays a few bucks a month, a few dollars a month, but then they have access to the university's resources.
That's a good idea.
And a workshop, and there'd be a limit, right? But a number of workshops per year, per some time frame, access to the university library, things like that. And certainly as people are shifting their career from one to the next, I think the university could offer career services and things like that going forward to adults. But that would be part of the subscription model that universities could look at for adult education.
So let's say you had your own. Let's say you had the whole like control. Let's say if you have your own university, you have full control. How would you run it? Like, I don't know if it's too general, but especially like how nowadays everything's kind of changing a little bit. But how would you run it?
That's a big question.
It's probably way more complicated.
That's too complicated to probably get into right now. I haven't even thought of it from that level. I can tell you that if I had that opportunity, I would have to bring an awful lot of bright minds to bear on it because I'm not smart enough to figure that out by myself.
Well, let's jump into another topic. Okay. So you're a dean, and I had the wrong impression about not just deans, but people that are like have a higher position. Like it could be directors. It doesn't even have to be in like academics. It could even be like a boss, CEO, managers, all that. And luckily, my whole mindset has changed. I always thought, the people that are higher up, they're probably just, on their phones, doing nothing, for this and that. I had that mindset. But now, throughout these years, speaking with a lot of them, man, you guys are busy.
Yeah.
They're like a lot. And it's like before I was like, man, I wish I had that job. Now I'm like, I'm kind of glad I don't have that job.
A lot of people come to my office and say, there's no way I want to ever be a dean.
I asked Carly that too. She was like, no, I don't want to be that. Because I said, hey, do you want to be the president? She said, nah, I'll leave that. But what made you want to become a dean, and what's it like?
Well, I mentioned earlier that there's a span of influence that you have in your job. And I was really excited about the idea of increasing that span of influence. I believe in servant leadership. And the more people I have the opportunity to serve in my position, the more people whose lives I can impact in a positive way. And so it takes a while to learn to do it well. I'm not sure that I'm there yet. There's always more to learn. There's things that you can do better, and everybody makes mistakes. But I have developed an affinity over my years as a dean for addressing people's pain points, is the way I describe it. So when I talk to students and they tell me, oh, this is awful. I'm struggling with this particular process. I'm struggling with this particular topic. And I hear it over and over again. That tells me that there's a pain point that we might need to address. It doesn't mean we have to, right? If a student's struggling with accounting 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a pain point we need to adjust. But if we find that students are struggling when they're applying to the institution with a process, for example, then we can possibly adjust that process and decrease those pain points. And my experience has been that when you address those pain points in certain processes and areas, you can actually increase enrollment at an institution. And I've been pretty successful with that.
For example, like the School of Business, when a student's trying to decide what major, where they're trying to go, like why would someone be like, oh, let me go to, for example, the School of Business? Like, why would someone want to do that?
That's a decision that they have to make for themselves. We, of course, will help them in any way, give them the information that they need. But by definition, a liberal arts institution is a place where students should explore, and that's why we have a general education that students start with. They take courses from all over the university, where there's a set of requirements they have to satisfy in the different academic areas. So that, they have to take something in social sciences, they have to take something in science. And the idea there is make them a well-rounded person who has a lot of information in their frame of reference that helps them make intelligent decisions going forward and understand how the world works. But it also helps them determine what they want to major in. A lot of students come knowing what they want to do. A lot of them don't. And a lot of them change as they go through the process, right? For us, I think the question is next, if they want to be a business student, what do they major in? Do they major in accounting? Do they major in management? Do they major in entrepreneurship? Do they major in finance, marketing?
Oh, all of that is part of the business school?
Yes.
Oh,
decision sciences, supply chain management. We just added a program in agribusiness leadership. And then you'll go on a graduate school. Those are all things that we try to help students navigate, right? What would be a good major for them? A lot of times they know. And and we also have a business core that students take before they start taking a lot of their major courses. So the business core helps them know what part of the business discipline inventory that we offer do they like, and do they want to do for a living.
With the students, it might be like because the town is a little more different than where I'm used to, since it's like a smaller town and I'm from like a bigger city. Has there been any like students that graduate, they got the mindset, all right, let me start something. I don't know, let me start a little small business company or whatever. But have they ever tried doing it like here in town, or do most of them just kind of like just spread out? Have you seen anything like that?
I would suggest that if you brought 150 of our students into a room and asked how many already have a business, a fair number of hands would go up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To celebrate our first year anniversary on March 1st, we are giving away a $50 Visa gift card. Head to the link in the description to enter, and winner will be announced on March 1st.
Do you think any of them will have like or have you seen, well, throughout your career, have you met people that have, had a business that became like, super, super successful, and some of them have failed at anything like that too, right?
I've met people that could be defined in both those ways as an individual. Absolutely.
So what tips would you give like a person that, they want to start something, but they just don't know, they don't know what to do?
Well, I think I would say first and foremost, learn everything you can about what you're trying to do, and don't assume that you know what the public wants. In my training as an entrepreneurship educator, one of the first things they teach you is you don't know. You can have a suspicion, right? But you don't know if people will actually buy what it is you're selling. So don't invest too much of yourself or too much of your resources into something that you haven't tested in the market, and create what's called a minimum viable product. What's the minimum product I can bring to the market to see if it will sell? Or once I know it will sell, even then, minimum viable product, so that I can start selling and fund improvements later. I might know that I want to get to Z, but if I can sell A, move to B, fund my move to C, that's the way to start.
You're right. And I could give an example, because me and my wife, besides working at the university, sometimes I guess, it is a business because it's an LLC. We make Mexican food. She's from Mexico. She makes authentic stuff. This happened a few years ago. We came here, and there's always like a demand for like restaurants, and I wanted something different. I was like, first of all, there's like Tex-Mex, but there's no that like authentic stuff. And I was like, hey, why don't we do something like that? Why don't we sell food? And we always hear about like food trucks or like a restaurant. And I'm like, no, let's change it up a little bit. Let's do something different. And what's popular in Mexico, street food. I was like, why don't we do something like that? And yeah, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. We started doing that in the summer. I had to figure out like the paperwork and all that. And we started selling in downtown on the street. We had everything.
With like a cart? I've never seen it. So
yeah, so what we did was, I bought a Blackstone flat top. We have some tables, put a tent. People could see me like, I guess grilling, cutting, and we make it like everything there. That's what they usually do in Mexico. And we started doing that every Saturday, Sunday before Myra was working, and it was great. And then we got invited to, have you heard of a flower farm called Flourish Flower Farm in Elk Point?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it's a flower farm that they got. It's been growing every year, and it's kind of strange because I'm like, it's just flowers, but it's very, very popular. They didn't have food or vendors, and then they asked us, well, let's do that. We'll do it on Sundays. And it was a dedicated day, and people, they liked it. And over the next year, then we started doing, I think we got invited to like the Ribs Rods here. And then they
Ribs Rods and rock and roll.
Yeah. Then did it Thursday on the Plots, and everything was great. Then the following year, we started hitting up more of that flower farm, and they were like, hey, why don't we change something up a little bit? We started offering tamales, and then that went fine. And then this year we started doing that, and then we hit up the brewery, and it was going great. So it kind of, it does like, you kind of start small, and then you start, doing this.
You fund your growth with your sales.
Yeah.
You can.
I'm telling you, the hardest thing though, and was like figuring out cost and also what you're going to, your supply. And because at first I was thinking, I was like, oh, why don't we just sell it, for example, like $1? Because when I was younger, that's what it costs. Nowadays, it doesn't. Luckily, my wife is like, she's in the accounting department. She knows numbers. We were figuring out like, supply or how much it cost, our margins, and we got to pay taxes and this and that. And then that's not even, because you could think, you're like, oh, it's going to be popular, it's going to be good. Yeah. But what if, you could sell it, but are you going to recuperate? Because then there's no point. And then another thing too is like different seasons, different days. Because also, so for example, people are like outside. It might be good on the summer. What happens if it rains, or like a different time frame and this and that? I'm like, hey, you learn different things. And another thing was like the marketing. How do you reach out? Facebook, like there's Facebook, and then you got to make it different, because then you get all these like other competition coming up, and you're like, hey, well, how do we make it different? Or we branch out, or what can we offer? So it starts changing. So luckily, it's kind of cool. You kind of learn all this stuff on the spot and experience. Luckily, I had my wife. Luckily, she went to like the accounting and business stuff, because me, I wouldn't have not figured that out. And then you do learn some stuff, like you fail at this stuff, and then you kind of don't, and then you get successful. And I don't know. It's
It's a process.
yeah. So what I encourage, like, if any people are out there, just do it. But like you were saying, don't, because I guess we could have, like, for example, say, hey, well, yeah, let's get a restaurant, or let's buy one, or like a truck. But hey, you don't know if it works out. It's better to kind of start small, and then you advance.
One of the things we teach students in entrepreneurship is there's 3 incredibly important relationships for every entrepreneur. One's a banker, one's a lawyer, and one's your accountant. An accountant can help you with a lot of that too. Which they can actually get into standardized costing and, profit and loss and what you should charge and things like that.
And the lawyer part?
Everything in business is legal, right? There's always liability. You've got permitting considerations, right? Things like that. And it's always good to have an attorney in your corner. And of course, you can reach a point where your sales won't fund the growth you would like. And so you can go to a banker with your sales history and your business plan and borrow money to grow, which is the way a lot of businesses do it at some point. But starting out small is an intelligent way to do it.
Now I'm kind of curious with let me see if I can say the word right. So like, for example, here in the US, we're, it's a free market, right? That's how generally
theoretically, yes.
Yeah, theoretically. When people implement, like, for example, regulations, it might depend on what it is. Does that limit it? Does it help out the consumer, or does it also depend? It just depends. Like, for example, something I saw. Yeah, if someone wanted to open up, I'll give an example, and nothing bad has happened. Like, for example, here in town, you register or you get your permits, for example, to sell food. If there's like a little thing that says, you could be at this specific spot as long as you have permission from the person, from the business that you're in front of. Makes sense, because it's their property.
It's their property.
Yeah. What if it says, also you got to ask the businesses that are like 50 or 100 feet if it's fine? Because wouldn't that also kind of limit it? Because if this business, like, that's right behind me says, yeah, it's fine, you could set up at our place, it's fine. But if there's another, like, let's say a Mexican restaurant on the other side in town that says, no, we don't want that, doesn't that kind of limit the competition a little bit? Or is there like a way?
You can look at it a number of ways. You could also look at it as that business has invested a great deal in their location and in their marketing and in their product and in training their employees. And you can go on with a long list of how they've invested their dollars and their blood, sweat, and tears into that business. And then, for the permitting process or whatever, to allow you to set up a competing business temporarily, right next door, it potentially can run them out of business, or at least very much hurt their revenues for a day or a week or however long you're there. Competition's a good thing. I'm not arguing that, but there sometimes does need to be controls. Your example is a tough one to talk. In fact, it would be a great example for a discussion in a business class. But if you look at other regulations, for example, you're in the food business, so let's talk about that for a second, right? Is it NSF, National Science Foundation, has some rules or some suggestions on how food is kept, and NSF approved is a lot of the equipment that you have to have, right? I used to have an ice cream shop, and then the state will actually inspect you.
Yep, they do that.
And make sure that you're keeping your ingredients for a taco warm enough.
Yep.
Right? And that it's
true.
protected from insects in your environment as much as possible, or whatever. There's a whole bunch of rules, right? And I know restaurant owners live in fear of those inspections, right? Everything from do you date the food in your freezers, right, and your refrigerators so that you know how long they've been in there. And it's painful, and it takes time, and it takes money, and it takes a lot of mental energy. But those rules protect the consumer. They also protect the business, because if consumers get sick eating at your business, you have a massive liability on your hands, right? So you can look at those as a painful requirement of being a business, or you can look at it as a necessary part of managing liability.
Yeah, because you don't want to. Because the whole thing is you don't want your consumers, for example, getting sick, or you don't want nothing bad happening to them. That's the whole thing. I have actually, this is a good example because I've complained about it before, and I think it involves with the state, and it's super strange. It made sense, and then it didn't make sense. So when we started, since we would get this, you have to apply. One of the permits is it's a temporary food license. We couldn't get like a full one because we're not like in a building. Yeah, in a building, or even like a food truck. So it'll be temporary. So what we get is we apply, you set up, you submit your plans, what you sell. They give you one for 2 weeks, and you just apply for it. And same thing, like we had one time we had the inspector come and he make sure everything's, is everything cooled? Is everything warm? The general stuff. It's fine. And it was great. We got that. I paid it and everything's fine. And then you also get to get a permit with the city saying, hey, it's fine to sell in this city.
Yeah.
The following year though, I called them up and I applied and they said, hey, we can't offer that that temporary food permit. I'm like, how come? Like, did something change? They're like, no, it's because there's been a lot of people in the state applying for them, and there's just too many people abusing them. I'm like, what does that affect me though? I'm like, okay, but but can I get it, or what do I have to do? Because I don't want to get in trouble. They said we could issue it to you, but the only thing is as long as it's a city organized event. A city organized event. So before we would be like Saturdays and Sundays. I'm like, I can't like be out there? No, unless it's a city organized event. I'm like, that's kind of crappy. One of them that it did help us out, they said, is there like a farmer's market? I'm like, yeah, it's in downtown and they'll set up on Saturdays. They said, you can set up there only on the Saturdays. I'm like, that's weird. And I was talking with a buddy of mine about it. He says, because I was like, maybe it's like a safety thing. But they're like, well, if they're saying, oh, it's only, if you only can set up during like a city event so people don't get sick, I'm guessing like, I guess it's okay if they could get sick on a city event, but not on an event. It would be the same exact thing. It's a weird thing.
It doesn't sound to me like that was a justification for it.
Yeah, see, I knew it wasn't.
I don't know the background, so I won't speculate, but I doubt it has to do with food regulation. It has more to do with business practice.
Oh, okay.
I'd be my guess, but I'm not going to. I won't speculate on that because I just don't know the background of it.
Yeah, it's probably more complex. I have to hit them up again.
Probably politics involved.
Oh, it's probably that. Because that's what. Because it's a good everything. The city was great. They said no, yeah, because people liked it. People enjoyed it. It's something new. It's something different. So I'm like, oh, there we go. It's attracting people, and everyone's having fun. I'm following the rules. But now that the state or whatever put this thing, now it kind of limits it. It hurts me. But it doesn't just hurt me, it hurts the consumer because they're like, well, now we don't get any, like, for example, tacos on the street or whatever. So it was a weird thing. That's one of the things that we haven't sold tacos on the street in town. We've done a flower farm, but now with this, with the brewery that's here, now we can. Same thing. There's these weird, like laws, as long as it's this. I don't know. I was just trying to make it fun because like, even back in Texas, like it's a popular thing, street food. Now I don't know if it's regulated, but it's something fun. That's why we were trying to offer. But see, it's a weird thing. So that's why I was thinking like it probably hurts.
Yeah, I've got nothing on that.
But see, it's one of those things that it's just super strange. But enough on the tangent too, because we're running out of time. For you, Tim, what's your plans for the future? Like, do you want to become the president of USD?
Oh, God, no. No, dean is my apex. I love being a dean. I've been an academic since I was 23 years old. And I taught classes for decades. I'm done being a teacher. I like administration. I like that work. Above me, my direct supervisor is the provost, Dr. Kurt Hackemer. Of course, his direct supervisor is the president, Mrs. Sheila Gestring. President is a 24/7, 365 job. It's so public. I respect anyone who will do it. Dean, a little more under the radar. I'm a shy kid from North Dakota, to be honest with you, Northeast North Dakota. I don't necessarily enjoy being the center of attention. A lot of presidents don't either, but this is a sweet spot for me. The future for me is to keep doing what I'm doing, keep making a difference, and keep moving institutions that I serve forward.
And you like the job. You enjoy it.
Love the job.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't meet a lot of people
not
that
every day, not every moment, right? But I love the job. I love the people I work with. It's a privilege to walk into the building every day.
Yeah, I think the people are great. Carly was great. I know Chet. He's a great friend. He's amazing.
There's two kinds of people that and this is a tangent for me, right? But I remember talking to the president at University of North Dakota years ago. His name was Kupchella, Dr. Kupchella. He asked me one day how I liked my job, and I said I love my job because I mostly work with people who feel that when they step foot on campus, the campus makes them better. The university makes them better. I said, there's a few who think that when they set foot on campus, they make the campus better. And those are the ones that always cause problems. And Dr. Kupchella said, boy, you couldn't be more right on that. But I truly believe every day I set foot on a university campus, it makes me a better person. The place makes me better.
That's great. Do you guys have any events or anything coming up? Last words especially with the School of Business?
Sure. We've got some speakers coming this spring. We don't have dates yet. But we will have we have a speaker series that we'll be bringing in a pretty in the academic world, a well-known speaker. We have a lot of events with student organizations and things, but I don't have the list in front of me right now.
Okay. Sweet. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you so much, Tim.
You bet.